it's my pleasure to bring to our audience, Kofi Appenteng, President and CEO of the Africa America Institute. And Kofi, please forgive me if I am not pronouncing your last name correctly. You want to help me out there?
Sure. And thank you, Denise. It's wonderful to join you today.
Sure.
Name is Kofi Appenteng.
Appenteng. Thank you. Thank you. Names are important to me, and I want to make sure that, we get them correct. And it's a pleasure to have you with us and to learn about the Africa America Institute. This is not a new program. Some of organizations has been around for 71 years. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. As you said, it's my privilege to serve as president of the Africa America Institute. And we were founded in 1953. And two of our principal co-founders were William Leo Hansberry, who created the first African Studies program in the U.S., and Horace Mann Bond, who was the first Black president of Lincoln University. And they decided to co-found AAI because they saw the world was changing. They saw that colonialization was on the wane, and that freedom was in the air. And given the historic ties between African Americans and people in the Caribbean and people on the African continent, just throughout the African diaspora, they saw their liberation as really tied to the liberation of people like them on the African continent. And they were wonderful mentors to people like Nnamdi Azikiwe, who was the first president of Nigeria, people like Kwame Nkrumah, who was mentored by Horace Mann Bond, who became the first president of Ghana. And they believed that a key ingredient in liberation was going to be liberatory education, and not just learning the history that was being taught at that time about how the world came to be, but integrating knowledge about Africa and its worldwide diaspora into the human story.
When you say liberatory education, define that for me.
So for me, liberatory education is education which has a purpose of helping one see clearly where one belongs in the world, that one are part of the human story. And that is liberating in that you're now part of that human story. So let me give you an example. So many of us who are older, like me, when we went to school, we read about ancient history, nothing about Africa. We read about medieval history, nothing about Africa. And then we heard about the transatlantic slave trade, then we heard about colonialism, and then we heard about these newborn African nations. So a liberatory educational approach would be to point out that there are ancient civilizations that were existing during ancient times. And many of them were on the continent of Africa, that there were times when people used to go from other parts of the world to parts of Africa to learn. And there were Africans always engaged with the world. It wasn't this story where Africa was discovered and then people became enslaved. So that's an example of what I mean by liberatory education. It's kind of opening up your eyes to the possibilities of life.
And as one, you're originally from Ghana, but the education that you're speaking of, I think, is representative in the U.S. and around the world as well. I mean, even in our native countries, I'll put it that way, we don't always get the benefit of that liberatory education. So do you see it now more prevalent that students in African countries as well as in the U.S. are beginning to see more of that, or not?
I think there's been huge progress, lots
Hmm.
to go, but I think technology has opened up a lot of possibilities that just weren't possible before. So it's now possible on a small smartphone in a remote place in rural, um, Kansas, to learn about something happening in Senegal, right?
Hmm.
It's possible to hear music from all around the world, whereas before, if your record store didn't have it, it didn't exist, right? So I think that technology has opened up a lot of opportunity, but we still find it's necessary to try to work together to try to help um, teachers and schools um, provide the kind of education that our students are hungry for. So an example of that is we have been working for the last 4 years in Southeast Michigan, which is kind of the Detroit and its surrounding counties.
Hmm.
And we're now working with schools serving about 40,000 students and their families, um, and integrating knowledge about Africa and knowledge about the African American experience into what they learn. They may do plays that help them learn some of these stories. They may learn to read using books that tell wonderful, rich stories where the pictures and the words evoke a sense that they belong in these stories also.
Interesting. I mean, that is, I think that's the way you make things happen. And of course, I'm just going to add, now that folks are getting these DNA tests and really trying to discover their, particularly African Americans, their African roots, that's opening up the door, from my observation, of more people trying to learn more about, where they come from, and the history of their native countries or their families prior to slavery.
Mhm.
Right? Like you said, prior to the transatlantic slave trade. But let me ask you now, AEI, like you said, has been around 71 years. Um, how did you get involved with AEI?
I first became involved because the then president of the African American Institute, Maura McLean, who's now a historian and president emerita, um, was looking to add some African perspective to her board, um, from someone who lived close enough to New York where I could be an active person. That was around 1999. And I served on the board from then. I'm still a member of the board, but I'm now the chief executive officer in addition.
Yeah. And, AAI, I'm going to say the name, I keep saying AAI, but the African American Institute, we, just talking to folks, have really sort of helped to develop, uh, inspire, encourage people who have come from the continent, come to the United States, and gone back, and actually become leaders. Talk about how AEI grooms um, individuals to go back home and to become leaders in their own countries.
Okay. Well, Denise, I think grooms connotes the wrong thing.
Thank you, because I didn't like that word either. But yes.
So, so part of our work is this liberatory education, and
Yes.
it meant that over time, more than 23,000 Africans have received scholarships or fellowships from us. And as you know, talent is widely distributed, but opportunity is less so.
Right.
So some of those who are fortunate to get support from us for their educational journey and from many others and went to wonderful schools that opened their minds to all kinds of possibilities, they then have a sense of purpose about their lives. And sometimes that means that they have, a healthy ambition to, try to make a change through government, through politics. But some of them, practice medicine. They open health clinics. Some of them promote art. Some of them are scientists. They're from all walks of life. But because there are so many of them, we found that some of them end up, running countries. The president of South Africa, the president of Namibia, the president of Cote d'Ivoire, all of them, we've had the privilege of touching their lives through our work, and they've gone on to be leaders and doing their part to try to improve the situation in their countries.
How do they learn about the African American Institute? How do they becoming involved? What kind of marketing or promotion is done actually on the continent?
Yeah, so we do very little marketing and promotion. So what we do is we raise money
Okay.
that and we work with donors. They could be government, they could be corporate, they could be philanthropic, and I would say philanthropic donors are probably the largest contributors over the last 15 years at AI. Prior to that, there was a lot of U.S. government programs that we felt were good programs. And what we do is based on the program terms, we then reach out to students. So we raised some money for STEM scholarships for high school teachers in East Africa, right? It was the East African Development Bank wanted to fund it. We contributed also. We then put together, we worked with alumni from East Africa. We identified teachers who were really dedicated and wanted to get additional skills and knowledge so they could be more effective as teachers. And the scholarships financed them coming to Rutgers University here in New Jersey. Those people have, some of them have gone from getting a master's to getting a PhD. Some of them are now back in the classroom. Some of them are teaching other teachers what they've learned. So that's just one example of how we go about it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the total amount you said was what, 24? How many thousands have
about
participated?
20,000 scholarships and fellowships that we managed over our 71 years.
So, Kofi, does that operate both ways? Are African Americans also eligible for programs to go to an African country for, a learning opportunity and then come back? How does it work? Is it just?
Yeah, we have had programs where we've had donors who've wanted to fund that experience for students or kind of people who are early or mid-career to go and spend some time learning about business, about art in an African country, and then as a way of enriching their lives. Mm-hmm. It has worked both ways. We will, so long as we feel that it's a good program, right, and it's funded in a sustainable manner, we're happy to manage both of those types of things, bringing students here, students there. We even sponsor African students to study in African countries, which is a lot more efficient. The U.S. is a much more expensive market for higher education than Africa is. 80 years ago, there were fewer African universities. Now there are a lot, and among those are some fantastic schools. And who want to be more Pan-African. Maybe they're in in Ghana, and they've only been getting lots of Ghanaian students. And we have a donor who wants to support more African students, and they want it to be more efficient. So we can then bring students from 10 different African countries to this university in Ghana, and that university thrives in new ways with that. So
it sounds like an amazing opportunity for the participants, and a great resource for funders, who really want to invest in the future of various countries and their people. And so this 40th anniversary, 40th annual awards gala that's coming up on September 24th. Tell us a little bit about that. And is this part of how you all raise your money or attract funders or celebrate funders? What's going to happen on the 24th?
Yeah, the 24th, it's always a really fun evening. As you said, this is our 40th year doing it. And it began because during the UN General Assembly, which was when we always hold it, we found that there were a lot of important discussions going on, very little attention happening to good work, to achieve.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, in Africa and in African diaspora community. And so, it's an awards gala, and we try to shine a light on great work that's being done and we think should be celebrated and should be part of the conversation during that time. And we usually invite at least one head of state. Sometimes it's to focus on transformative things that have happened in the country. This year is special because one of our alums is the late Age Gengab of Namibia, and he was a wonderful human being, loved by by people all over the African continent and in the diaspora. And AAI helps support him coming to the U.S. To get a couple of different degrees. And he then went back home and was part of the liberation struggle, etc. And he died earlier this year, and we're going to celebrate his life with the current president, who's also an alum of one of our programs, and the late president's widow. And we expect a number of other African leaders will want to come because he was so beloved. We will also be celebrating the incredible work that the MasterCard Foundation has been doing. They are a huge foundation, and they have decided to focus most of their giving in Africa, and also to do a lot of things with First Nations people in Canada. And that kind of singular focus you don't tend to find focusing on First Nations and on African peoples. And we want to kind of really celebrate the leadership they've shown. And we want to also curate some interesting conversations about what's happening in terms of how countries like Ghana and Liberia are harnessing the youth in new ways in terms of how they're changing and transforming economies.
Yeah, that's sounds like it'll be a fantastic conversation, because we know that Africa's a very young country, meaning most of its people are under the age of around their 18, 20. I'm not sure what the age group is, but you have a large youth population across the continent. And so how, they are being trained and engaged and involved in some of the things that they're struggling for. That's what I like it. They want to be a part of the growth and development of the country. So are you the one that's going to be doing the fireside chat with the president of Liberia and the president of Ghana?
No, we're going to have a real journalist do it.
Okay. All right.
Managed well. we are looking forward to having a wonderful celebratory evening
Uh-huh.
with about 500 um, of our community members.
Wonderful. Now, quite honestly, I mean, I know at this point, well, one, can people still attend this event? And then for those who cannot attend the dinner, or at least will the conversation be, um, live stream in any way? Is there an opportunity for people to kind of still participate, even if they're not in the room?
Uh, there's no way to do that live. However,
Okay.
within a week, we release a video of the entire program. Uh,
Okay.
Remember, it's a reception and a dinner, so we don't think anybody's going to be that interested in watching a bunch of people drinking and eating.
Eat. Exactly.
The actual awards program, and when we let people know what AAI has been up to in the last year, and all of that is taped and will be available on our website and on YouTube. And we will have a sizzle reel probably within the first two days. And then each portion of the program will be, you can go to the piece of the program that you want to listen to, or you can listen to the whole thing.
Wonderful. Before we close, I just want to ask, because a lot of our viewers, I mean, we're about to start a segment called Win Africa, Washington Former Newspaper Africa. So we call it Win Africa because we like the acronym WIN. We're happy to be, of course, a proud sponsor of your event. But, in getting more people engaged in an interest in what's happening in Africa, but could you explain or maybe say why it's important for African Americans to be concerned or involved in, current day activities that promote Africa, and how can they also support the Africa America Institute?
Okay. Well, thank you, Denise. So the way I think about it is that we all have a stake in learning our full story. So it's important for somebody in Senegal to understand what's happening in Harlem, New York. And it's important for someone in Harlem, New York to understand what's happening in Accra, Ghana, or in Johannesburg, South Africa, because we all got to be where we are in the world. It was a whole global system that created this diaspora and created the conditions under which it lives. So I think the reason to learn is that it will liberate your mind, and it will, I think, put wind in your sails to learn just how much we all have in common and the many, many ways that we have influenced the creation of the modern world, and will have a big say in what the human family does going forward.
Wonderful, wonderful. And how can our viewers actually engage, support, learn more about the Africa America Institute?
I would encourage anybody to go to our website. It's aiafrica.org. And you will see all as much as you want. We have so much rich material that just gets added to every day on the website. So whatever it is your passion is, I think you'll find more that you can really dig into. And if you are available in New York and want to buy a ticket for the gala, they are on sale, and you can do that online too.
Wonderful. Kofi Appenteng. Did I say it correctly this time?
Appenteng, yeah.
Appenteng, thank you.
Yeah.
President and CEO of the Africa America Institute. I want to thank you so very much for taking some time to be with us today to tell us more about AAI, and you're always welcome to come back to share. We'd love to meet at some point some of your, they're not students, what would you call them? Participants in the program?
Yes. So
Okay.
they are, when they finish the program, we call them alumni. And
Alumni.
in
Okay.
the program, yeah, they are program participants.
Great. Great. Looking forward to talking to them and learning so much more and getting involved in the work that you're doing. So wish you much success and hope you, I know you'll have a successful event on September 24th.
Well, thank you, Denise, and congratulations on the wonderful work you're doing at the Washington Informer.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Have a great day.
You too. Bye bye.
All righty.